Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Hello and welcome to the Skeptic Zone for the 16th of May 2014. Richard Saunders here with you with episode 291. And don't forget you can follow the Skeptic Zone on Twitter at Skeptic Zone. Coming up on this week's show, we have more from Maynard's spooky action and what spooky action it is from Maitland Jail, where Maynard and I attended Paracon, the paranormal convention, just last week. This week, and yes, you can say it's a bit unusual for a skeptical podcast. But, however, this week Maynard speaks to what many regard as Australia's foremost Yowie hunter, and for those of you who don't know, Yowie is the Australian equivalent of Bigfoot. Rex Gilroy. Rex Gilroy lives in the Blue Mountains, just west of Sydney, and for years and years and years he's been claiming to have lots of evidence for odd homonyms and things running about. He has a very large collection of those plaster cast footprints you see on paranormal documentaries. Let's hear what Rex Gilroy has to say to Maynard about strange creatures in Australia. I think you'll find this particularly interesting, especially if you're interested in cryptozoology and strange creatures and things like that. And if you're interested in Bigfoots, if you're living in North America, I think you'll find this interview an interesting look into the mindset of a Yowie hunter. That's followed by an interview with Mark Wallbank from New Zealand, who is, well, more or less along the same lines, looking for strange creatures. And finally, Maynard talks to Ben Hansen from the TV show, which I must admit I haven't caught up with yet, Fact or Fake, who was also flown out here to take part in the Paranormal Convention. Following that, it's a week in science from our friends at the Royal Institution of Australia. This week, Dr. Paul Willis looking at fossils. Then to round off the show, another report from QED in Manchester, the great convention, which I wish I could have been to this year, but never mind. Eran Segev chats with Mike Hall from Skeptics with a K podcast. And I know many Skeptic Zone listeners do listen to Skeptics with a K. A couple of notes before we get stuck into the show. Our friends at the Science on Top podcast, well, they're about to celebrate their 150th episode. They're going to be doing so with a live broadcast, a live show. I guess you don't really broadcast a podcast. Do you broadcast a podcast? I don't know. It's a live show, Saturday the 31st of May at the State Library of Victoria. For more information, go to scienceontop.com/live. Tickets are $25, but you can get a $5 discount by entering the promo code SKEPTIC, spelt with a C or a K. And congratulations to the Science on Top podcast. Also, for those of you in Sydney, there's still time for you to get your dinner tickets for next week's Skeptics Dinner, where we're going to be hearing all about insects that want to do horrible things to you. More details at www.skeptics.com.au. While you're there, you can check out details of the upcoming National Convention here in Sydney at the end of November, with special guests, the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, George Harab, Dick Smith, Dr. Rachel will be there, and many more. And finally, I wonder if you might help out a friend of mine, Alison Smith, who I met many years ago at the Amazing Meeting, but I've known about her for some time because she at one stage was running a wonderful site called SAPS, S-A-P-S, which was a sort of an answer to TAPS, the paranormal show. She ran SAPS, the website, about really investigating the investigators who investigate ghosts, if you follow me. Anyway, Alison's done something very interesting. She's put together sort of a fan video for Doctor Who, a show that, many of us enjoy. It's called The Time Run. It's a fun video concerning the 10th Doctor, David Tennant. Anyway, she put this online. A Doctor Who convention in the UK saw it, and they were so excited about it, they want her to appear at their convention so she can present the video. Wow! How flattering is that? But she needs your help. If you'd like to help get Alison over to the UK to attend a Doctor Who convention, make her dream come true. Follow the links on the Skeptic Zone site, www.skepticzone.tv. If you Google the time run, Doctor Who, you should be able to find that video. It's a great video. She set up an Indiegogo campaign. Let me have a look. Her goal is less than $3,000, so if you feel like chipping in, go for it. But right now I'm going to give Fred the cat a little scratch behind the ear. There you are, Fred. He's a nice cat. Run downstairs, have a look for the cheddar cheese. Cheddar cheese on sourdough toast, grilled under the oven. And I like to sprinkle a couple of chili flakes on top of that. Yeah. And then I might, while I'm doing that, I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone.
Here's Maynard's spooky action at a distance.
Of course, it's not very often you get to meet a legend in the cryptozoology field here, such as Rex, but please fill into the listeners who you are and why you are such a well-known figure in the community.
Well, I'm Rex Gilroy, or Rex the Yowie Man. I'm known as the father of cryptozoology and relic phenomenonology in Australia, which I founded when I was 14 years old back at Liverpool Boys High School. I remember that in the school library. I collected all the information I could on mystery creatures, and that set me off. And here I am, recently turned 70, and I have no intention of retiring. Thank you.
And you say zoology, which is the correct pronunciation?
That's it, zoology, cryptozoology, that is creatures unknown to science or thought long extinct that may still be with us.
You're well known for your interest in the Australian ones. Internationally, what do you think is the most internationally famous one?
Well, of course, everybody's heard of the Yeti, and I believe it could be a living relative of Gigantopithecus, and there's people that want to link Gigantopithecus with Bigfoot, but Bigfoot's footprints look like more human than ape and parallel our Yowie footprints, and also others between there and Australia. So it's certain that our Yowie has a relationship with Bigfoot. I believe actually from fossil footprints, Homo erectus is the culprit, and that these creatures are living Homo erectus.
Yeah. Has there been recent sightings we can point to here in our area?
Oh, yes. In the last 5 years, there's been several Yowie sightings up in the back blocks and behind Mount Royal Range, for example. And I've got stories going back, the 1840s. And there's also the...
Is anything any closer in the Hunter, any in the lower Hunter, or any in this area, or does it mainly be around your Blue Mountains?
No, there's been sightings around here, but at the moment I'm planning to get up into the back blocks on Monday to investigate an area where there was a Tasmanian tiger seen. I'd seen a thylacine at Blackheath in 1972. So I'm quite convinced they're still around.
How did they ever stray up this far? I thought they were only that they died out in the mainland even before they died out in Tasmania.
That's the official record, but there's stories throughout a wide area of the Eastern Australian mountain ranges and across the Gulf country. There's Aboriginal rock art found even up into the Kimberley showing them, and there's evidence that there was a small population there still alive some 60 years ago, and that scientists wouldn't act on the information and said it was nonsense, the people had mistaken it, and then someone found a mummified specimen in a cave, and they realised how wrong they'd been. They had a chance to probably save it or whatever. But I'm I'm interested in the new genetics research that promises the future regeneration of some of our deceased, extinct so-called creatures. There's not only marsupials, but there's birds to consider. Who knows what's ahead in science? But what I'm trying to make people aware of is that the Australian bush is so vast that and inaccessible in many cases that anything could live there. And I've spent my whole life tramping into that sort of country, and that's why I find so many things, so many footprints, for example, of one creature or another, because I get into places that no one else would dare.
That's what I was just about to ask you, but you've answered the question there. Is that what keeps you fired up at 70? And it's basically exploration of the unknown, isn't it, Rex?
It is. It's exciting. It's life's blood for me, and while I keep on doing it, I'll stay alive, I'm sure of it. I'm not going to die in any hospital bed. I intend to be out there in the bush, and if the end can be dramatic enough, I'll live on in legend.
And you've always got a bit of a. You look down at the scientists and the academic community because you see them as naysayers, don't you?
Yes, they stick to the textbook too much. Many of them are experts, well, desk experts, because they hardly ever leave their desks, and they poo-poo the claims of many an amateur who are more experienced than they in field research. And this is it, you've got to get out in the field. You can't do your research in a laboratory all the time. And
although it is hard to get hard evidence sometimes, isn't it? Because sometimes you can get some scat droppings that people can argue about. They're going to argue about the footprints. It can get difficult to get solid evidence.
Yes, it is. And there's no physical proof yet of the Yowie, for example. There's a lot of footprints, very encouraging, and I've been able to filter out authentic tracks. And of course I found some myself. My talk tomorrow will be on the, I've called it The Yowie Mystery Solved at Last. And it comes from my new book, The Yowie Mystery, Living Fossils from the Dreamtime, which we're launching at this conference. It's on sale now, and it's the work of a lifetime put into this, all the best footprints and fossil tracks that show identical features to modern-day casts. And I've been able to show that there are three forms of Yowie. There's the pygmy type, and certainly there's the modern human height form of classical Homo erectus, who was a tool-making, fire-making hominin. And, of course, there's the giant Yowie, or 3 metre or so tall creature. Now, all these Homo erectus-type beings, their footprints are all much the same, whatever their size, and they all wore animal hide garments, hence the name hairy man, or Yowie, to the Aborigines in this part of the country at least. The name varies all over Australia with the different dialects, but they all meant the same thing. Hairy man, hairy people, hairy woman, and it was because they wore animal hide garments, cloaks, like the Aboriginal people did in the old times. And I have freshly manufactured stone tools that I found out in the forests, out in the middle of the Burragorang Valley, up in central Queensland, and even up in Cape York. And these artefacts parallel ancient ones found in Java of Homo erectus. So I believe Homo erectus is the Yowie, the main one, but there's a fourth one. He doesn't make tools or clothing. He doesn't make fire. It's a very ape-like creature and lives on berries, herbivorous and insectivorous food generally, and the footprints left by it match fossil footprints we believe are Australopithecine. I do have a 2 million year old skull from the Narrow-Neck Peninsula at Katoomba, found in 2005. And it came from deposits between the end of the Pliocene, beginning of the Pleistocene, making it 2 million years old. I am the discoverer of Australopithecus beyond Africa. But there's other evidence to show that the Australopithecines did leave Africa. They came up through the Near East. There's fragments of bone and whatever. They're still being argued by scientists. But the hobbits, for example, are a mystery. And they're, of course, from Flores. which was part of the big land shelf, which included Indonesia and whatever, linked to Australia back in the Ice Age. And the evidence, I believe, is that from the scientific discoveries of the Homo floresiensis, the hobbits, their feet have Australopithecine bone structure, and this Australopithecine yet Homo erectus features about their skulls, and other parts of their body hark back to archaic Homo sapiens. What are they? It means that 3 different populations came together between there and northern Australia, and I believe that they interbred, and that I think it might have been that it started in northern Australia rather than outside.
Look, you've obviously got these theories, and you've got it in your book, and you've seen the scene change since you're a young lad at school to now. Have you found the interest in the people of Australia and the paranormal? Has it changed? How do they approach it? Yeah,
people are being more open-minded now. There was a time when journalists used to make funny comments about me. I stopped going on live television because of it. I'm not a fool. I'm a serious researcher, and I have lived long enough to see people more open about things they've seen, and the whole climate's changing now. But I have fought hard to make the road clear for future young researchers like me with the enthusiasm to get out there and look and not care a damn what other people say. The fact is that he who dares wins. And those that get out there in the bush are sure to find something. But
look, it's easy enough for you to get on Facebook and poo-poo stuff, but you should actually get out in the bush and do a bit of looking around before you start poo-pooing stuff.
I have fossil evidence to prove the fossil foundations of the Yowie mystery, to show there were 4 different creatures that were a composite. Created a composite Yowie. The Aborigines just heaped them all together. They called any non-Aboriginal race that was here before them hairy people. Yowies in this area. There was the Yahoo, there was other names for it in various parts of the country, but they all mean the same thing. But they just heaped them all together into one composite creature. They weren't. There was at least 4 of them, and subspecies of them too. More than one giant race, more than one form of Homo erectus, regional variations really, in Australia. And I have now found conclusively, as far as I'm concerned, that there is a link in the foot structure and the footprints of the Yowie with those of creatures in Malaysia, all the way up to Borneo and Vietnam, Cambodia, China, Russia, and the Americas, where you have Bigfoot, and his tracks are identical to our Yowie. And we mustn't forget the Moihau in New Zealand, who, like the Puri, the hairy devil people of the Solomon Islands, are all linked. There was a land shelf that linked New Zealand to the Solomons and New Guinea and Australia, which continued on up through Southeast Asia to mainland Asia before the sea levels rose at the end of the Ice Age and created the island chains and cut us all off.
Well, look, thank you very much for your time today, Rex. And I've got to say, look, it's been great to meet the legend in the cryptozoology field here in Australia. And look, have a great time here. And I think we should see some more of this sort of thing.
That's it. My collection is sitting up there. I've got all my fossil hominin skulls. I've got all the evidence that I've been speaking of for years, the giant stone tools and other things. And I've tried to get scientists to look at them. They just will not give you the time of day. The evidence is not supposed to exist. It's not allowed to exist, so it mustn't. It's not in the textbook.
And where can we find you online, Rex?
Well, RexGilroy.com will get me. Then there's MysteriousAustralia.com and the Australian Yowie Research Centre.com.
Thank you very much, sir. Great to meet you.
I always love talking about these things with anybody that's interested.
You're a hoot.
I welcome any phone calls or whatever from people. I just love distributing my knowledge, as it were, to anyone that's interested.
I'm here with Mark Wallbank, who has come all the way from New Zealand. Auckland, New Zealand.
To talk about cryptozoology, and that, of course, that is the big thing. Is it cryptozoology or zoology? Because the second O is part of ology, so how do you say it from an expert?
I say zoology.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, well, we'll go with that, because already we're looking at like a conspiracy of the zoologists against the zoologists, and we don't want that going on.
That's right, yeah.
You've presented in Australia before about New Zealand cryptids, and please explain to the wider audience what we mean when we say that.
As far as cryptids?
Yes. People.
Just cryptozoology is basically the study of unknown creatures that have been seen, spotted, that haven't been documented yet or scientifically recognised yet. Yet people claim to see them. They could be extinct animals that are still being seen today, or they're just unknown species that haven't been seen before, but some people are seeing them, so yeah.
Is there an animal worldwide that has recently gone from being a cryptid, one that hasn't been seen, to actually going in the books officially?
Well, they've been through the years, like in the panda, the mountain gorillas. They were all thought to be myth. People saw them, nobody believed they existed yet. Now they're recognised. That was a while back, but not recently, no. I don't think so.
And what is the hot topic in New Zealand? Obviously, we have the Yowie here in Australia and various animals like that, and you seem to have a primate equivalent of that in New Zealand.
We do. We have the moeho, which is it's basically, I guess it's a relative of Bigfoot. It's a sort of hairy creature. There were tribes of them that used to battle with the Maori, in fact. They were quite vicious creatures. They've found... caves have been found with old tools, bones of an ape-like creature. So there is evidence there that it did exist. Very, very similar to Bigfoot, yet they were quite short. They were a lot shorter, about 5 foot tall, and very hairy, very nasty little buggers. Meat-eating, just nasty, yeah.
And of course, what is the equivalent of the Tasmanian tiger, which may still be around, although no one's found one? It's not looking good for it. Is there an extinct animal that everyone's hoping could come back in New Zealand?
Yeah, the moa.
And what is that? That looked like a
giant bird.
That looked pretty nasty. I don't know if you'd want that back. I mean, the Tasmanian tiger's not going to take anybody because it's not too big, but that bird could do some damage.
It could. It's very similar to the emu, but a lot bigger. A lot more robust, a lot more stronger.
And actually, you had photos of a preserved claw.
I know.
How large was that?
Oh, I think that was over a couple of feet long. It's a huge claw, and it's very well preserved. It's probably the best remnant of something that old, yeah.
Wow. And what's been the reaction here today with people?
Well, I was first on, so I was testing the microphone and testing all the equipment, unfortunately, but I think it's been quite positive so far. I mean, I'm just the first one on for the day, so... Yeah.
And do you think the cryptozoology it cops a bit? And people go, well, where's your examples and that sort of thing? And by its very nature, it's difficult to find examples.
It is. It is an unknown science. But then again, what is science? Science is based on theory. It's about you make up theories to start with, and then you just go out there and try and form a hypothesis and prove those theories. So it's no different from science, really.
Well, it's a bit difficult to get a peer review with zoology because I don't think you can get a degree in it, unfortunately.
No, not really, no. But it is similar. In fact, we all form our theories, and then we have to go out there and try and look for answers. So I guess it is very similar to science, but... And
in the Shaky Isles, where is your favourite place to go looking for New Zealand cryptids, you yourself, when you get out there and get your boots dirty?
I like the Yowie Ranges, which is by Hawke's Bay there in the North Island. It's a great place. Coromandel Ranges is always a good blast to get out there for a few days and wander the bushes.
Okay.
It's very dense bush there, so we've got our own areas.
Okay. What's it like nocturnally there in those areas? Is it a bit spooky, or is it just like anywhere else in the world? Has it got a special quality in New Zealand?
I wouldn't say so, no. Pretty much the same as every other bush, We will have... There's nature out there. You're out there with nature, and in the night time, it's always going to be a bit creepy.
And best case, Mark Wallbank, a cryptid of interest anywhere in the world, what's the one you want them to find and go, aha, we told you it was there all the time?
Definitely Bigfoot. I've always been into Bigfoot right from the beginning, right since I was a kid. So, Bigfoot, definitely.
That's great.
He's out there.
And if people want to check up with you online, start a debate, find out all information, where can they go?
They can go to my website. I'm from Haunted Auckland. It's a paranormal... because I'm a paranormal researcher mainly, so hauntedauckland.com, That's our website. We're also on Facebook, so you can go there, and we talk about everything from cryptids to UFOs to ghosts to everything. We cover the whole paranormal spectrum.
Now, because it's been raised earlier there, where do you sit on the EVP? I'm always a bit, because it can be interrupted by radio and other white noise, and you can have audio pareidolia. Do you think it's too subjective to actually use or not?
I haven't seen a lot of evidence myself, to be honest. I'm a bit on the fence with EVPs. We've had more luck using other meters and gadgets that make sound, that pick up electrical fields and things like that, and we try and use those for communication purposes. And we've had more luck, whether it be coincidence or just an ongoing series of just amazing things that happen that we can't explain. We found other gadgets more useful than EVP.
Yeah, because EVP seems a little bit too easy. Like when you die, you're in another realm, and you can only manipulate a very small fraction of the electromagnetic spectrum that relates to tape heads or CD lasers or something. Yeah,
I totally agree. But then again, it's another field we don't fully understand, so it's all just theory. You can be skeptical about it, you can be positive about it, but it's like, either way, we don't know. So it's a matter of just looking, trying, experimenting, and just seeing what you can come up with. Sometimes things work out, and sometimes it's explainable.
Look, Mark Wallbank, thank you for your time.
No worries, thanks a lot.
Look, I tell you what, I was a huge fan of Fact or Faked on every level, and I'm with the man that dressed up in the suit and ran around. You were the fall guy for many of the physical gags in the stunts in the show. Ben Hansen, welcome to Australia.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's good to be back. I lived here for a year. Went to uni up in Brisbane, and then we filmed an episode of A Mermaid.
Yeah, look, that was the thing about your show. You'd be sitting around in a room which looked a bit like a stoner room, I got to say, watching these videos, and you'd go, let's go to Acapulco, let's go to Spain, let's go to Australia. Good budget.
Well, we tried to find places that were tropical, as long as, if there was a ghost in Hawaii, we're there,
I didn't see you in snow very often.
No, it's always good when you have a lot of supernatural going on in a beautiful place, and that, if it took a mermaid to bring us to Australia, that we came for the mermaid.
And like I said, you end up doing a lot of the physical stunts. You'd be running around in a suit or taking a fall or doing... Is that because you were the most buff one there, or you just draw the short straw?
Well, Austin was kind of our go-to guy for most of that. I did do some of it. I dressed up like a Bigfoot once, and I was really kind of afraid because we were in Kentucky. And if you wander off too far into the woods, you've got hunters walking around with rifles, and they would love to put a Bigfoot up on their wall.
Yeah. So where did Fact or Faked sit in the great diatribe we have of the paranormal? You did 2 seasons, I believe. Is that correct?
They called it 2.75. It was really 3.
Oh,
yeah. We came along just about a time when the genre was kind of getting saturated. And the production company that met up with me, I said, well, look, this is what I'm seeing on TV, and this is what's not there. And what we weren't seeing is a lot of people looking at the primary evidence that's already at hand and testing it. And so that's kind of how the concept came about.
And how did you go with the skeptics and the scientific community?
We got a lot more positive feedback from them than most of the other shows.
Well, look, 2 words, chasing UFOs. Well, maybe that's actually more than 1 word, really, but yeah.
It's so funny because so many people...
Put you in a bikini and you can race up and down the mountain all day.
Yeah. So many people have said that here, and it's the exact same in the States. I have... All those guys are my friends, and they're all embarrassed in the way that went.
Look, because the guy involved with it, Fox, made 2 very interesting movies. I Know What I Saw and Out of the Blue, and he's embarrassed. But can you what happened there? Were they trying to make something a bit more credible, and the channel went, no, we want entertainment?
Yeah, they pitched it to them as it was going to be a bit different. And when James and Ben McGee got into it, they realized Nat Geo pushed the envelope, and Ping Pong Productions, and I know the guys over there, they were just a little too willing to do what the network wanted, and there's only so much the audience can take.
But of course, there is a trade-off with television, because you've got to make it entertaining, and you could sit all night in a haunted house and nothing can happen, because even if there are some paranormal things, it might not happen that night. You're there with a crew with all the lights and everything.
Oh, exactly. And we're filming, I figured for every our shows are an hour long, but each segment, when you take commercials, out, is about 17 minutes. So 2 17-minute segments. We film about 70 hours of film just for that 17 minutes. So when people come out and expect for things to be flying around, all this action, you got to realize we've been there for like 4 days, and you're seeing the highlights. It's like watching James Bond life. His life is not like all gun chases and everything. He does his taxes too.
And people push poo through his letterbox. He has a tough life,
That's right. So it's a little bit of a misnomer, but end of the day, these things really do happen, and I've seen a lot of crazy things.
And people ask you, what are your qualifications? You have a background in law enforcement.
I do. I don't know that qualifies me to ghost hunt, but it certainly helps. My focus was really on interviewing. Because there's only so far you can get with a lot of the experiments that we do and looking at the video. And by the time you've run your course there, you got to look at the people telling the stories.
Yes, because often you'd come in at the end and go, I think they might have been yanking the chain or something like that. And how do you normally tell? Because they'd always run on the screen a visual image as if it had been looked across on a computer or something. But were you doing it with your ears, or is there certain ways you can tell the waveform of a voice if there's stress?
We do use a technology called layer voice analysis. It's similar to stress voice analysis, but it's a little bit different how they analyze it. And the waveform they used on the show, if you look at the first episodes, that's the actual software. Later, they tried to simplify for people.
I thought it was Chic Le Freak they were just putting across the thing. It was a bit of the old Nile Rodgers track.
No, it really was analyzed, but I was like, guys, come on, because it would go, deception detected. And that's not how the software works, but it really was analyzed.
But there was a machine like that on Lost in Space, I'm pretty sure, at some stage.
Yeah, something like that. I wish I had that in a lot of my relationships.
Very handy if you had it in real time. And tell us, you had a bit of involvement with Bill Clinton on an interview show lately in the States and Area 51.
I did. He appeared on Jimmy Kimmel, and he asked him some questions about what he did to look into UFO files. And we took that 2-3-minute segment and turned it to a 36-minute analysis. And his body language really does, I believe, indicate he was very highly stressed and guarded and concealing something. What it is and why he was stressed, we really don't know, but there were uncomfortable topics for him.
If I was him, I would have been worried that Jimmy was going to ask some questions about something other than UFOs. I think UFOs would have been a relaxed area for President Clinton.
Any other women, President Clinton, besides Lewinsky, is the only one that we know about?
How's that Haiti charity going? Stuff like that.
Yeah.
Look, have a good time here. And what have you made of the local audience lately? I know it's only early. You've only just come here. You haven't had time for the really wild action that gets going here at Maitland late at night.
I love it. I love this country. It's like my home away from home, and it's great to be back.
And where do you think you should go in Australia to experience some paranormal, where you've been? Where do you think is one place you could recommend that we could go in our own country?
Well, I've heard a lot. Believe it or not, I have not been to the Blue Mountains yet, but I have been told that there are hot spots there, just like we have in the States, where everything goes on. You've got Yowies throwing things at you. You've got, strange aerial lights. You've got sort of poltergeist activity. And next to Aborigine lands, like we do with our Native Americans. So anywhere you just go walking out in the bush in these types of places, you could expect something to happen.
And where can we find you online to find out what you're into at the moment?
www.benhansen.com. All my events, everything that I'm doing, and the different projects. I'm filming a new show with Smithsonian Channel and history.
Wow. Okay. So what's going to be the bent of that one?
It's a UFO documentary.
Oh.
Yeah. It's all UFOs. We're looking at some really historic cases and new things, and actually looking at government documents, and then seeing where that trail takes us.
The Majestic 7.
Majestic 12.
12, sorry.
The 7 was...
They started as 7. They did a movie. They overdubbed it, put some great soundtrack there. But yeah,
they were the least popular of the 12.
Great cowboy outfits. Look, I better bugger off now. Now I've made the mistake here. Thank you very much for your time. Have a really good time in Australia.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Majestic 7. On Maynard.com.au. I'll pick something from my cart library at random. Pick a letter of the alphabet. I'll see what starts with that.
W.
Let's find out what's in my cart library that starts with W.
Hi, this is Wendy James from Transvision Vamp. You're listening to Maynard on The Breakfast Show, JJJ. But baby, I don't care.
This is Woody on the Maynard Breakfast Show. It's Triple J. Hi.
This is Woodard Scott with the Today Show in the States, and I just want to wish Maynard a very happy 100th birthday. He looks like a truck hit him.
Hi, this is Weird Al Yankovic, and you're listening to Sunday Afternoon Fever with Maynard F. Sharp Krabs. I can't believe it!
I'm glad you've enjoyed your visit here. We're in the just near the scenic toilet here, and as Richard, as you know, I am interested in alien abductions, and as you can see in my backyard, it's night time at the moment. It's a bit chilly, but I've got the landing lights out here, and I'm hoping that these can only be seen from the air. You can't see them from the road. I'm hoping aliens will one day come to visit me.
It's quite amazing. You know, you've got all these lights spread out through your garden, and you can't see them from the road. And the first thing I thought of when we opened the gate was Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Mm-hmm. When they have those special landing lights for those UFOs way back in the 1970s.
Yep. I'm going to be that funky guy on the keyboard that gets his ears blown out and the glass gets blown out of the kitchen when the aliens go on Maynard.com.au. Hey, you!
Welcome to A Week in Science from RiAus, bringing you the science you need to know. This week we take a look at some fabulous fossils that have been in the news. It's the ultimate blast from the past. A small flying reptile, or pterosaur, has been found complete with an unlaid egg. Named Darwinopterus, it lived in what is now China 160 million years ago and was first described in 2009. Since then, several new specimens have been found, including this one with a remarkably well-preserved egg inside the body. It appears that the animal died after breaking a major bone in her wing while still carrying her egg. Being unequivocally female, this specimen confirms that the females had wider hips than the males to make way for proportionally large eggs. Another fossil from China, a 520 million year old arthropod called Fucasia pratensa, has given us a glimpse of the oldest nervous and circulatory systems ever seen. The creature's organ systems are surprisingly sophisticated for such an ancient animal, almost as complex as in today's arthropods, such as scorpions and horseshoe crabs. About 50 of these 75mm long creatures were trapped by an ancient storm under many layers of fine dust in a seabed that once covered part of China. And now, 4 fast facts about some other fabulous fossils. A paleontologist in the US has found the second half of a fossilised bone from a giant sea turtle. The first half was found more than 160 years ago. A 520 million year old giant invertebrate used bizarre facial appendages to filter food from the ocean, much like modern baleen whales. A 66 million year old dinosaur from North and South Dakota has been described as a 3-metre long chicken from hell. And a study of DNA from moas in New Zealand confirms that they were doing all right until humans first appeared there. All 9 species of moa went extinct very soon after the arrival of the first Polynesians in the late 13th century. That's it for this Week in Science. For more information on fabulous fossils, go to the RiAus website, riaus.org.au. Follow us on Twitter at RiAus and like us on Facebook. I'm Paul Willis, and we'll catch you next week.
Hey guys, this is Jay from the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe. And whoa, hold on, whoa! Everybody knows I'm the only reason to listen to the freaking show, right? I mean, if it was up to me, the show would start with this. Yeah, boy! Well, Rebecca would hate that probably, but I mean, I'd rock that. Listen to our show and you can learn about cool stuff like a technological singularity, which is someday when technology progresses so fast that it would make the Industrial Revolution look like a kid's science project. Anyway, come check us out at www.theskepticsguide.org and get your science on!
Grain of salt. Grain of salt. Grain of salt.
Let's all take this with a grain of salt.
is Eran Segev.
Grain of salt now. Grain of salt, you gotta take it with a...
I have with me here Mike Hall, who's the host of Skeptics with a K, and until recently was one of the organizers of QED, but had to withdraw. Is that correct?
I did, yeah. Sadly, unfortunately, I had to withdraw. It's a sad story. Is last year my mum was diagnosed with cancer, and so trying to manage that and managing problems that I was having at work at the same time, I thought I need to reduce the level of stress in my life at the moment. Unfortunately, QED was a source of optional stress that I had to drop out. It was a very difficult decision to make, and I was involved until about mid-January, but then I had to drop it, sadly, and I'm kind of regretting that decision.
Yeah, well, I should point out that there's part of the closing statements made today by Andy. He emphasized that QED is your vision and very much modeled in the image that you've tried to create. So congratulations, because it really is a fantastic conference, and we just talked before I operated the recorder about how the atmosphere is very friendly, and the basically feels very accepting, and which is for a conference like this, which is at least in my opinion mostly about the social interaction. I think that's a really useful thing to do.
Yeah, it's an atmosphere that we try to cultivate. We've always said with QED, I've always said, and the guys have always said that it's we want to organise the kind of conference that we would like to go to. And prior to being involved with things like QED, I used to organise Doctor Who conventions as well. And so I kind of see myself, I'm still really organising a Doctor Who convention. I'm just inviting Richard Dawkins instead of Tom Baker, basically. Although they both happen to have been married to Lalla Ward at some point. That's just by the by. It's kind of, we wanted to invest to put on the kind of conference that we would like to go to, and so that's what we've done with QED. And we put an emphasis on the social side. We put an emphasis on the meeting new people, hanging out at the bar and things like that. When we designed the name badges that people wear, we put the people's forename in bigger letters, in a stronger type, so it's easier to see. Because mostly you're interested in the fact that the guy's name is Fred, not that his surname is Jones. Nobody's really. No one's going to go to say, "Hi, Mr. Jones." You're interested in, "Oh, hey, Fred, I'm John."
Something else, which first time I see that, is that the name is actually on both sides.
Yes,
because that flipping thing which people do at conferences all the time.
It is. That's actually the first year that we've done this. Is have the badge two-sided. It's always previously been one-sided, and the flipping thing has annoyed me for all three QED events that I was involved in. It was that the flipping thing was really annoying, and so I'd said, no, we're going to have to look at moving to two-sided badges so it can flip and it's not a problem. And so we did that this year, and I think that's worked really, really well. But we get accused sometimes at QED, because we have this emphasis on the social side, and because the speakers that we invite along are. Basically, they're talking about skepticism to a skeptic audience. A skeptic event for a skeptic audience. We're not trying to change anyone's mind. We're not trying to convert anyone to anything. So we do get kind of accused of preaching to the choir. There's a couple of points that I think on that. There's one thing is that I don't think we are preaching to the choir. I think that people like Elizabeth Pisani, who we had on stage the first time, she came up with some really challenging material. She came up with things like... Actually, skeptics will blame the Pope's pronouncements on condoms for the AIDS in Africa, and actually the data doesn't bear that out. It turns out that what Catholics do is, if the Pope says don't use condoms, well, that's a justification for what they didn't want to do anyway, and they're quite happy to ignore the Pope when it's things that they don't agree with. And that's what the data shows. And so she's basically arguing we should stop going around blaming the Pope for the AIDS in Africa thing, because it turns out it's not his fault. People don't want to use condoms, and the Pope is an excuse. So we do deliberately come in and challenge people with material that we get from our speakers. The other thing is that I don't see a problem with preaching to the choir. I think sometimes it's just nice to know that there is a choir. It's great to feel like you're part of something, to feel like you're involved, that there's other people who think the way that you do, especially with people of a kind of skeptical persuasion. Prior to the advent of kind of online skepticism, often you were the only person who thought the way that skeptics think, and you might have thought you were the only person in the world who thought that way. And so you're used to kind of being a soloist. And suddenly you're like, oh my God.
And not necessarily a soloist that is hugely appreciated by the environment.
Exactly, yeah. And so you've been going around singing this song and people have been telling you to shut up, and suddenly there is a choir. Well, you know what? I want to celebrate being in the choir because I'm fed up of being a soloist. And so I think preaching to the choir, it's not de facto a bad thing.
It's I think there is a very strong element of reinvigoration and building up the emotional reserves that are required to continue some fairly difficult battles. You know, when you talk about the anti-vaxxers and they're like, I think we need that energy. We need to meet people, and I think Marsh mentioned in sometime during the last couple of days that. One of the goals is for people to meet each other and talk about and come up with ideas and you know, it's been shown in the US that I'm not sure that it's true now, but it's definitely in the earlier years of TAM that every year after TAM quite a few new groups form.
Yes.
So because people meet and they catch up and say, okay, you know what, we need to do something. They get in touch. They find people who in their area that they would not meet otherwise, and they also meet people who can help them form the group because these are people who have established the group the year before, following time, and all. So I think it's a very, very important goal.
It is, and it's one of the things that we have because QED kind of grew out of our involvement with Merseyside Skeptics. And the guys at Greater Manchester Skeptics, and so we both ran Skeptics in the pubs in our respective cities, so it grew out of that environment. So every year we've had this session, this space where people who are involved in organising Skeptics in the pub, or who want to be involved in organising a Skeptics in the pub, can come together and swap ideas and say, well, what works for you? What doesn't work for you? This works for us, this doesn't work for us. And to be able to exchange those ideas so we can steal ideas from other people, from other groups. Well, that works for those guys. Let's take that back to our city and give that a try and see if that works for us. I think it's really useful to be able to have those conversations in a face-to-face environment.
Now, I want to ask you about the podcast. About
yes.
With a K. You've just had a change in personnel. Colin has unfortunately
has left. Yeah, it's a shame. Colin and I go way back. Colin and I were actually at school together, and it was that Merseyside Skeptics. Merseyside Skeptics was it was my New Year's resolution. I'd said, Christmas 2008, I'd said, right, next year I'm going to do something about this whole skeptic thing that I was getting more and more interested in. And around the same time, I'd noticed that Colin on Facebook had recently liked the page for Brian Dunning's Here Be Dragons video. And so I got in touch with Colin and said, I didn't know you were into all that sort of stuff. And he said, yeah. And so, I talked to Colin. We advertised on Meetup. And then Marsh saw the advert in Meetup, and then Marsh got involved as well. That was the first time Marsh and I had ever met, was when, Marsh got in touch via Meetup. And Merseyside Skeptics went from there. So Colin's been involved since way back at the start. Obviously, he's been involved in the podcast from episode 1. He was involved with Merseyside Skeptics from episode 1. But now he's his fiancée, Jill, is heavily pregnant at the moment. And so Colin's, with his impending responsibilities as a father, he doesn't feel that he can commit the time, literally leaving his girlfriend at home with the baby while he goes off to talk nonsense on a microphone with two guys.
We should point out that at the moment she carries the baby with her wherever she goes.
That's
inside.
True. Yes.
So him not being here, in my opinion, he's just being a pussy.
But she is very pregnant. There was a serious risk that she might actually go this weekend. And we wouldn't really want that in the middle. We'd have to get it. Although, in fairness, if you're going to stand on stage at any conference and say, is there a doctor in the house, QED is probably the place to do it. You'll have half the room putting their hands up.
No, actually, this is more, I think, still more the place where you say, my computer's not working. Anybody help? That's more likely where you...
So, yeah, we've lost Colin, and that's a shame. And I'm hoping Colin, a couple of years down the line, once the baby's a little bit older, maybe Colin will come back to the show. I don't know. It's up to Colin. It's entirely up to Colin what he wants to do. But we've got a new presenter in who's Alice, who's a cellular physiologist at the University of Liverpool. So we've actually got a scientist on the show who knows what they're talking about now, instead of just the three of us talking nonsense about stuff we don't understand.
And she did a very good job in the first episode of embarrassing the two of you.
Yeah, Alice is going to be wonderful. I'm really pleased that we managed to get Alice on board, although the timing of the announcement kind of didn't work out so well because We have a history on Skeptics with a K of annoying people with April Fool's jokes. So we did one episode where we just made all the stories up. We did another episode where we just pretended to be completely credulous morons for an entire episode. And so we have a habit of winding people up around April 1st. And everyone thought Colin leaving was an April Fool's gag. And then it's like, well, Alice is kind of an anagram of Colin a little bit. And so we've got a new presenter, Alice. And, oh, dear, no. So lots of people were writing in, refusing to say, oh, congratulations, Colin, hope you have a good time. Because they thought it was a prank. They thought we were punking them. So, no, we're not. We're really not. We've kind of fallen foul of the podcast that cried wolf. And we're stuck in this situation. But no, the people will find out the hard way as they listen. Alice is genuinely Alice. She's not Colin putting on a funny voice.
And she's clearly, she knows what she's doing in the area of science.
She does, which is more than I do, and it's more than Marsh does. I
was actually listening to that episode while I was on the bus from my hotel to this hotel this morning. So, it was very good. Now, I have some inside information that suggests that you're a bit of a stickler for production values.
I am. I very much am.
So, how long does it take you to edit a show?
It's improved recently. Early on in Skeptics with a K, we'd record maybe 3 hours of material and then edit that down to like just about an hour, between an hour and 10 minutes we kind of aim for. And that used to take me, it takes me about 3 times as long as the recording to do the edit. So if we record 3 hours, it would take me 9 hours to do the edit. And obviously that's going to be done in my own time in the evenings and things. So there is a reason the show is recorded on a Monday and goes out on a Thursday, because that's how many evenings it takes me to get the show edited. So it takes me a long, long time to get the show edited. Recently, we've kind of improved that. Just as we've improved at this podcast game, we make fewer mistakes, we make fewer fluffs than we used to, and so we've got that down. So it sometimes only takes me 2 nights now instead of like 3 full evenings to get it done. And this last episode, I actually managed to get done the day we recorded, but there's a lot of ums and ers in there that I really want to take out. And it's just,
Marsh told me that he told you that, if I say it's my fault, leave it there.
Yeah, but it's still, it doesn't sound good. I like having the polish,
So are you also more scripted with time or more planned in terms of how the podcast would go?
It's odd, actually. Marsh frequently will show up for Skeptics with a K and completely wing his story. He will be talking, he'll have no more than a couple of sentences scribbled on a piece of paper, and he'll just off the top of his head read off his story. What you hear me say on the show in the segment that I do is word for word scripted. I just write the way that I speak so it doesn't sound like it's scripted. So I'm word for word scripted, because otherwise I will and and stutter.
Yeah, Colin was
and it'll sound
quite clearly scripted too.
Colin always scripted his material. The comments that we have in between when we interrupt each other, that's always spontaneous and off the cuff. And sometimes it doesn't work and I have to cut it out because I'll make a joke, it just falls completely flat. But yeah, so I all my stuff is word for word scripted, even like ums and ers and repeats and things like that. I'll put those in because I know how I speak and I can write how I speak. So I tried my best to disguise the fact that I'm reading. I think I do a slightly better job of that than Colin does. But I'm actually very scripted, but Marsh just does it off the top of his head because he's a fool, I think, actually.
He's coming next. Hopefully. So, what's next? What are your plans? I mean, obviously, clearly, now that you've added Alice, you clearly plan to continue with Skeptics with a K, which I'm very thankful for. I really enjoy your podcast. What else? Are there any other projects or plans that you have for the near future?
Well, we're going to keep marching forward with Skeptics with a K. I hope that show's just going to run for as long as people keep listening to it. If people stop listening to it, we'll probably stop doing it. If people, if I get bored, we'll probably stop doing it as well. But at the moment, it entertains us, and we record the show for ourselves. We occasionally will get people who write in and say, "Oh, you should do this, or you should do that." We get people who write in and complain that we swear too much. It's like, well, just listen to someone else's show then. It's not the show for you if you're going to complain that we swear too much. Because honestly, I speak like that. That's how I speak all the time. That's not emphasis that we put into the show.
Maybe I should point out to the listeners right now that you do not have a paper in front of you.
No.
And you sound exactly like you do on the podcast, so quite clearly that's the way you speak.
Yeah. So it's so we're going to keep going with Skeptics with a K. I've kind of got a bee in my bonnet at the moment about placebo and placebo effects. And this idea that it's something Mark Crislip talked about at his talk for QED about this idea of how powerful placebos are, and people seem to have this idea of placebo as some like huge mind over matter effect. Yeah. And recently, for the Good Thinking Society, Marsh was involved in producing a website for Homeopathy Awareness Week, which we thought, well, let's jump in on Homeopathy Awareness Week. We want to raise awareness of homeopathy too. It's one of the best ways to convince people it's nonsense by telling them what it actually is. So it was a Good Thinking Society project. Marsh drafted me in to build the website for them, so I was quite happy to do that. But looking at the comments people were posting when I saw the site being shared around Facebook, a lot of the comments were like, well, if homeopathy works as a placebo, placebos are actually really powerful, so what's the problem? What's the harm? So I've got this kind of idea in my head. I want to look at doing a project to try and do some public engagement on actually placebo is nonsense. There isn't an appreciable placebo effect. There's good research to back that up. So that's kind of a project that I've got in the back of my head at the moment. And of course, there's going to be another QED. And that's going to take up an awful lot of time as well. So there's going to be another QED. That's another project that we've got on the horizon. I'd say that's an exclusive, but if not, Andy announced it on stage. I didn't get a say. So, yeah.
I think I really don't think you have much of a choice. I think, of course you have a choice, technically. But the reality is that it's quite clear that the demand is there, and I think you would find it very difficult. I mean, somebody's organized a couple of conferences already, and we are in the middle of organizing a conference right now for November. I think it's very difficult to say no when the demand is there, and if you know that you can actually produce a product that your target audience will like, it's very difficult to say no to that.
Well, and we had, I worked out on Friday the number of people who came to QED this year is around double the number of people who came to the first ever QED. So we've managed, in the 4 years we've been doing it, we've managed to actually double our audience, which is crazy that we managed to get like double the audience that we had in that first year is really crazy.
And I also really like Andy asked, who's here for the first year.
He did.
And he also asked who's been here for all 4 years, and there was a fair number of hands.
There's a fair number of hands. We get a lot of repeat customers, but there was an awful lot of people with their hands down who were new people who were here for the first time this year, and that's awesome. That's amazing. I love that.
I'll tell you from my perspective, QED has a great reputation. Obviously, I've heard about it from Richard and Rachel, who've been here before and spoke at the conference. Mm-hmm. And I've been in touch with you and with Marsh over the years. But it's definitely a conference that has a good reputation around the world. So I think you'd expect more international guests.
That just gives us plenty of reputation to ruin. At some point, inevitably in the future, as we make the ridiculous missteps and annoy everyone. It'll happen at some point in the future, I'm sure.
I'm sure if you work hard enough, you will. Okay. Mike, thanks very much for being on the Skeptic Zone.
Thank you very much.
Grain of salt now. Grain of salt, you gotta take it with a...
Podcast Science is an award-winning weekly science show in French hosted by a bunch of crazy enthusiasts. We are convinced that the greatest ideas in science are quite easy to grasp as long as they're presented with passion, using a vocabulary common to all curious minds, whatever their academic background, if any. You don't understand French yet? Well, it's never too late. All our stories have a written transcript on the website, and people from all around the world are using our content to learn Molière's language. Our topics range from 0 to infinity, from evolution to artificial life, from electromagnetism to the science of introverts. We just love mathematics, science, critical thinking. So do you? Want to join? You can subscribe to the podcast for free from our website, podcastscience.fm, that's in one word. You also find us on iTunes and SoundCloud. See you soon, hopefully. Hâte de vous accueillir. À bientôt sur Podcast Science.
Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone, and I look forward to seeing many of you, I'm sure, later on in the year. Well, actually, not too far away now. Early July in Las Vegas at the amazing meeting. I'll be there racing around with none other than Dr. Carl Krasniewski, who I know is known to many of you, especially here in Australia. Dr. Carl is really excited about speaking at TAM. Hasn't been to TAM before in Las Vegas, although he spoke at TAM here in Sydney some years ago. And I had lunch with Dr. Carl the other day, and he was asking me all about the South Point Casino and Spa, the massive hotel where they have TAM. And I said to him, well, it's hard to describe it, really. You just sort of have to be there. For more information, visit the website of the James Randi Educational Foundation, www.randi.org. But for this week, this is Richard Saunders and Fred the cat, who is still... Are you going to wake up? Are you going to say something to the listeners, Fred? You going to purr or anything? No, he's pretty happy anyway. For this week, this is Richard Saunders, signing off from Sydney, Australia.
You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for comments, contacts, and extra video reports.